This is preparing for the ACT 2021-2022 English passage number 4. Now the title is Jeremy Frey, Weaving Heritage into Modern Art. So it seems like based on the title we're talking about this person, Jeremy Frey, talking about his heritage and how it shows up in modern art. So we read, the winning piece was a basket. It was 18 inches tall with a curved vase-like silhouette. So number 46 says, do we leave it as it was, or do we leave it this work of art reached, the object stood, or delete the portion? Now, the winning piece was a basket. So the it that's referring to was the basket that was right next to it. And usually we don't put that right next to it. We don't put a pronoun right next to the thing that it's referring to. So that means we can probably say that letter F is out. Now we can also say, well, wait a minute. Letter G is saying this work of art reached. Now, it is a work of art, but it's kind of wordy. And we can say, yeah, this is probably wordy. We can get rid of it. And this one, letter H, it says the object. Well, what object? The basket. It's right next to it. So we don't need to reword the phrase that when it's right next to it. So if we just take this out, the winning piece was a basket, 18 inches tall with a curved vase-like silhouette. It works. And so this question was all about being concise, putting all your words together in as small a package as possible to get the idea across. So, in the 90-year history of the Santa Fe Indian Market, the largest Indian art festival in the nation, the 2011 event marked the first time a basket won Best of Show. All right. So it says in the 90-year history of the Santa Fe Indian Market, the largest Indian art festival in the nation. So do we leave it as no change? Now notice that we have these two dashes right here. Now when you have these double dashes like that, these work the same as commas. And so that means when we have this comma phrase like that, we could take this phrase right out and the sentence would still work. In the 90-year history of the Santa Fe Indian Market, the 2011 event marked the first time a basket won Best of Show. And so anytime you do that, you want to be able to say, all right, whatever's in between the commas or whatever's in between the dashes can be taken out and the sentence should still flow. And if it doesn't, that's how you know it's incorrect. So this is not bad. If we go to the next one, Santa Fe Indian Market, the largest Indian art festival in the nation. Now if we try and read this without this phrase in between the dashes, the Santa Fe Indian Market, the largest art festival, the 2011 event, kind of mashes together, doesn't work. Letter C. Now here, this switches to commas, but these double dashes work just like commas, so it's the same idea. The Santa Fe Indian Market, the largest Indian art festival in the nation. So now if we take this out, it says the Santa Fe Indian Market in the nation, the 2011 event marked the first time. Doesn't work. Now, for letter D, here we have just one comma. So it says in the 90-year history of the Santa Fe Indian Market, comma, the largest art festival in the nation, the 2011 event, it still mashes together with the 2011 event that comes after it. So this is no change. So the 2011 event marked the first time a basket won Best of Show. The creator of the piece, the 33-year-old Passamaquoddy Indian Jeremy Frey from Princeton, Maine, the basket sold at auction for $16,000. So it says the creator of the piece, 33-year-old Jeremy Frey. Now this is introducing the subject of this sentence. But by the time it gets to here, it says the basket sold at auction. So all of a sudden it switches and makes the basket the noun. So what we need to do is we need to rephrase this so that he is the subject. And so that's why letter G is the subject, because it says he looked on as the basket sold at auction. because it puts so much on the creator of the piece, Jeremy Frey, it clearly means that he is the subject. Then it says, Frey describes his baskets as cutting-edge traditional. He primarily weaves a classic material, wood from the brown ash tree, but unlike most contemporary basket makers, he harvests, cuts, pounds, dries, and dyes the wood himself. So 49. We can leave it as no change, or we can start putting commas in different places. Now 49 is very similar to the first one in this passage in terms of, okay, here this phrase is between two commas. So we should be able to take this phrase out and have it work. So let's read it. He primarily weaves a classic material, wood from the brown ash tree, but he harvests, cuts, pounds, and dries the wood himself. That works. That does work. Whereas, if he read it this way, he primarily weaves wood from the brown ash tree, but contemporary basket makers, he harvests, cuts, and pounds, doesn't work. So we need a comma at the end in order to differentiate so it doesn't run into the he harvests phrase. Now, letter C. Let's try this one. He primarily weaves a classic material, wood from the brown ash tree, but unlike, now if we take this out, but unlike he harvests, cuts, pounds, doesn't work. So when you have a phrase between two commas, you should always be able to take it out, and the sentence should still be able to stand on its own and make sense. And if it doesn't, that's a sign that it's incorrect. Then creating highly elaborate versions of the sturdy utility baskets that have been used by generations of fishermen from Maine. All right. Now the problem here is that this is an unclear sentence because there's action, but it doesn't say who. And so that's why the answer for number 50 is letter H, because it clearly identifies that Frey is the one doing the creating. He's the one driving the action. 51. If the writer wants to delete the underlined portion, the essay would lose. So it says, the sturdy utility baskets that have been used by generations of fishermen from Maine. Now, if we said, the sturdy utility baskets that have been used by generations of Passamaquoddy fishermen. So let's see. Letter A, an indication that Frey honors their cultural heritage by creating baskets that look identical to traditional pieces. Well, that's not true. And the reason we know that is because these are highly elaborate versions of the baskets. They're not the same. They're much more elaborate. Letter B, a mention of the physical characteristics of the earliest baskets. Nope. That's not true. Letter C, a detail that connects his basketry work to the long-standing Passamaquoddy traditions. That's definitely true because long-standing connects with the word generations. And letter D, a point revealing that Frey's baskets are used by their fishermen today. Nope, doesn't say that. It just says his are highly elaborate versions that have been used. Now it says have been used. Doesn't necessarily mean they're in use today, but they have been used in the past. So that's why letter C is the correct answer. For example, his baskets feature complex weaving on areas that are often hidden and therefore typically not embellished. So 52 asks, which choice provides the clearest and most specific information about which parts of Frey's baskets are being referred to in the sentence and about Frey's manner of weaving these parts? So let's see. For example, his baskets feature complex weaving. Because what do we want? We want information about which parts of the baskets are being referred to and about the manner of weaving. Well, if we left it alone, it talks about the manner of weaving, but it doesn't talk about which part. So letter F doesn't work. Letter G, a remarkable level of detail on certain sections. Well, it's level of detail on certain sections, but it doesn't say the manner of weaving. Intricately woven Yep, that's a manner of weaving. Interiors and bottoms. That it gives specific parts. Characteristic interiors and bottoms. Well, this tells about the parts, but it doesn't say how they're woven. So letter H is the only one that talks about the parts of the baskets that are referred to and the manner of weaving. So now, 53. It says, phrase porcupine quills lids are often decorated with an art inlaid on birch bark. As far as lids go, I wouldn't say that is basic. So 53 says, which placement of this portion makes clear that the art that decorates the lid, not the lid itself, is made of porcupine quill. All right, so we can either say leave it where it is now. Now, does that indicate that it's the art that decorates the lid? Or we move it back over to here after the word are. So that would sound like this. Phrase lids are porcupine quill, often decorated with art, inlaid on birch bark. Okay, that's one option. How about often? Phrase lids are often porcupine quill, decorated with art inlaid on birch bark. Or the last one. Phrase lids are often decorated with porcupine quill art inlaid on birch. All right. So back to the question, it says, which makes clear that the art that decorates the lid is made of porcupine quill? So this last one, letter D, it says, phrase lids are often decorated with porcupine quill art. That is definitely the answer, because what it does is it goes right past the lids and it focuses on the word, on how they are decorated. It doesn't talk much about the lid itself. Number 54 says, with art inlaid on birch bark. As far as lids go, I wouldn't say that that's basic. So we have no change where we leave the semicolon. As far as lids go, I wouldn't say that that's basic. Now, if we left it alone, we should be able to cut off this last bit, and the sentence should stand on its own. Phrase lids are often decorated with porcupine quill art inlaid in birch bark. That does work. Now, is this right here, as far as lids go, I wouldn't say that that's basic. This should also be connected to the idea of this sentence, and it's not. And so that's why letter F is not appropriate. In the same way, letter G, a comma, also indicates that it's a continuation of the same idea. Now, the reason that letter J is the answer is because all of a sudden, we've been talking all along about Frey, and all of a sudden the word I shows up. That's a total change in voice. So we're talking about him, and now all of a sudden the narrator puts themselves in there. And so because of that, that's a total change in tone, and so that's why the answer is letter J. We need to be consistent in the way something is written. And so if the narrator hasn't inserted himself or herself yet, they shouldn't include themselves now. So that's why the answer is letter J. And while braids of grass are customarily woven into ash baskets to make them better, Frey incorporates braided cedar bark to create striking new textures. So it says, while braids of grass are customarily woven, now it says, has been, is seen, customarily woven, or is woven. Now it has to be, let's see, what are we talking about? Braids of grass. Well, that's plural. So that means we can't be singular. So C is singular and D is singular, as well as letter B. It's passive, but braids, if that were plural, it would be braids have been seen, or braids are seen. So the only one that agrees with the fact that we're talking about braids of grass is this, to keep with the plural. 56 says they're customarily woven into ash baskets to make them better. Which choice provides the clearest and most specific reason that grass is woven into the ash baskets? Now we want the clearest and the most specific. Now here we have to make them better. And that's not very specific. They are customarily woven into ash baskets for the sake of the objects. Well, we don't know what objects are. That's not very clear. For a useful purpose? Well, not very specific. To strengthen them. There we go. That's a very specific purpose. 57. Now that he's a nationally recognized artist of who has rejuvenated the art of basketry. Now, of who, we're not talking about him. Well, we are talking about him, but he's the subject of the sentence right here. So we don't say of who, we say who. Now the word whom is used when we're talking, when he's not doing the action, when he's being the object, that is the recipient of the action. But right now, he is a nationally recognized artist. So we're still talking about the subject. And when we ever talk about the subject, it's always who. Who has rejuvenated the art of basketry? Frey feels his role is to inspire. He's on the board of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance, a group that works to help preserve it. Well, what is it? Well, let's see. Is it the group? Is it the alliance? Is it art? Well, he wants to preserve art, but you'd have to get past this right here, and this is closer to this pronoun. So we would more likely be thinking, well, preserve the group. Well, we don't want to talk about preserving the group. He's talking about preserving the art. Preserve the art by reaching out to young members of Native communities in the state. His other goal is to continue to stand out. So with 59, you could say he stands out. Letter B, distinguish himself from the other weavers, so as a weaver he is set apart from them. Well, set apart and distinguished, those are synonyms, so this is way too wordy. Letter C, remain to be someone who gets noticed. Well, that's the same way as standing out, except we can say stand out is much shorter. Keep on being fully distinct. Well, that's the same thing as standing out. So 59 was a case of, if this idea works with very few words, we'll use that. The woven grass bracelets he saw on a recent trip to Hawaii have influenced how he shapes the bases of some of his newer bracelets, as he finds another way to make the traditional Passamaquoddy weaving something spectacularly his own. Number 60. The writer is considering adding the following sentence to the essay. The black stripes were woven flat, sharply setting off the white stripes, which were woven to form raised columns of perfectly even points, which seemed to cascade down the piece. If the writer were to add this sentence, it would most likely be logically placed where? Now notice we're talking about black stripes and white stripes. So it seems we're talking something about the design. So where would this make sense? Well, back here at the beginning, in point A, we haven't mentioned anything about the design yet. But in this sentence, it says black and white that runs from the crown to its base. Here we're mentioning stripes. So is it possible that we could use letter B as a possibility? Yep, that's definitely a possibility. Let's look at the others. Here it talks about his describing his baskets as cutting-edge traditional. Well, I don't see any mention of black or white stripes here, so that doesn't work. And then he primarily weaves a classic material, wood from the brown ash tree. No mention of black or white stripes here. So it seems like letter B is the only place where talking about black or white stripes makes sense. Not A, because he hasn't introduced them yet. So let's take a look. Seems like letter B is the most logical place. So yes, that is why that is the answer to that question. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out all the other videos on the playlist.